Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, in honor of Mother's Day, we're discussing the 1976 film Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. This is episode 368. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So, warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy, howdy. Drew Edwards is out this week. And finally, also in Denver, color commentary from the reason that we are doing a Mother's Day episode. A person who we gave choices as to what we would watch. Color commentary from the one and only Julia Guzman, the Guzman Immigration of Denver. Say hello.
I think it's funny that I'm the reason you're doing Mother's Day and not because it's Mother's Day and there are other people who are also mothers, but whatever.
I'm sure that everybody...
No, I said...
Maybe that's amended to the pod, like, in as far as this podcast goes, or
right.
any number.
Well,
I don't know. You're
my
correct,
point is
yeah.
just that
Anyway,
I in honor of
Day
Julia,
to
we gave her the choice, and that's how we wound up doing Look
Yes,
What's Happened
I said we
to
should
Rosemary's Baby.
We should do something in honor of Mother's Day, and Jason and threw out a few ideas, including this one. And I looked at a list, and we looked at see what was available to us, and this is what we came up with. And I apologize, Tony, for this. And I apologize to anybody. And I apologize to anybody that cares about the name of this movie, because I'm for sure going to end up calling it Whatever Happened to Rosemary's Baby, or even Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I don't know. Whatever.
Honestly, they should have.
Or What's Happening, and we'll play the What's Happening theme song.
Yeah. Oh, God, what a great show. I'm still hoping that because that was What's Happening Now was one of the first reboots where, like, nearly a decade later, they did a sequel series called What's Happening Now, brought back the characters. It was a true reboot in the 80s. And I really have been hoping that they'll have yet another reboot. So it could be
Well, maybe they'll join this one too.
Yes.
And they'll just have Adrian show up.
Adrian the Demon Baby. It'll be called What's Happening Now would be what I would call that. So, okay.
Right.
Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby, also known as Rosemary's Baby Part 2, so saith Wikipedia, is a 1976 American made-for-TV horror film. You wouldn't know it. And a sequel to Roman Polanski's 1968 film, Rosemary's Baby, starring Stephen McHattie. That he plays Rosemary's Baby, all grown up. Oscar-winning actress Patty Duke. George Maharis of Route 66. Oscar-winning actor Ruth Gordon, reprising her Oscar-winning role from Rosemary's Baby.
She's the best thing about this film.
Oscar-winning actor Broderick Crawford and Oscar-winning actor Ray Milland, all to bring you Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby, which premiered as an ABC Friday night film on October 29th. It's Halloween season. How groovy is that in 1976? The only actor to return from the first film is Ruth Gordon, and you also had an editor come back. And that was Sam Osteen. He was an editor on the original. He directed this. Patty Duke, who was a star in the late '60s of Valley of the Dolls, and had also won her Oscar, and was a big TV star. She was considered for the 1968 character of Rosemary. She didn't get it. Went to Mia Farrow, but here she is in 1976, less than a decade later, playing that role. And okay, so we should get into it. Let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go. Did we start with Julia last week?
No, we didn't.
Okay, then let's do. It'll be right. So it'll be Julia, Tony, and then I'll get us into it. So Julia, I know that last time when we discussed Rosemary's Baby, I asked you to stand in for all womankind and discuss the gender dynamics of that movie, and there was a lot to talk about. So now we've come back to this franchise. So I don't know if it lives up to that, but tell me your opening thoughts about it.
Lives up to Rosemary's Baby?
Look What's Happened.
I can tell you right now, it does not live up to Rosemary's Baby.
For the listener, by the way, if you want to watch along, if you want to watch this movie, you want to hit pause and go watch it. It's free. You can watch it on YouTube. And we don't usually promote bootlegs, but this movie is so deep in the bowels
it was a TV movie,
made for TV horror that's it's just Just go with that. It's on YouTube. So yes.
So, can I instead talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness?
I mean, every
No, I'm just
podcast
kidding. I'm kidding.
out there is talking about that movie.
I'm just kidding. No, it's just that speaking of Mother's Day, it really felt like that was a good Mother's Day movie, that one. But anyway, so this
Mm.
film
Mm.
could have been great because, as you said, there are so many amazing actors in it, and it's got some really it's got so much potential. I mean, poor movie. But it is not great. It is not good. It's got some great performances. It's obviously the idea of kind of an Omen style thing for Rosemary's Baby, like what happened to this kid is brilliant. I think there's some great notions, and I'm sure that being a TV movie meant that, but it had budgetary constraints and whatever. But there was just so many. I mean, I don't know if they wanted it to be a miniseries, and then they ended up just cutting it to one night because there's so many things where you're just kind of like, wait, what just happened? Where?
Yeah.
Why is she not here anymore? Like, who is this? And so I think that's what ends up being the problem more than anything else, is that there's just all these plot holes and kind of weird choices and weird effects. And again, I think it's probably time and money constraints rather than effort, because obviously, like I say, there's a lot of brilliant things. There's some brilliant direction. There's some brilliant performances. So it's not all bad. It's just not good.
Right. That was actually, I think, a very kind assessment of this film. Tony, what are your thoughts? Look what's happened. What a title, right? Look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby.
Man, it feels so. I agree. There's a lot of good ideas, but due to the nature of just how a lot of these TV movies were filmed and just how it's all put together, it did remind me of like a Satanic Panic era Chips episode, or off. And sometimes it almost feels like the more I was watching it with furrowed brow as far as the choices they made, it feels almost like it wants to be the pilot for some Son of Satan show.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like where you would wander around like Bruce Banner.
Yes.
It feels like it kind of wants to be that, but it feels, sadly, and I hate to, I hate to disparage someone's work, but it's kind of dull for a
Yeah.
movie full of Satanism and in its aggregate. Like, just when you're like, ooh, that's kind of interesting, like, whoa, he's got Satan powers, okay, he can influence people, and oh wait, okay, we're gonna kind of drop that and make him sad again. And then we're gonna have this conspiracy theory and how that works with Hollywood, but then we're gonna just move to this new place and we're gonna like all these things where you're like, it's so annoying because it's just on the cusp of like something interesting, right? And they just kind of drop it and then move on to some next thing.
Yes.
And it never quite congeals into something that's truly interesting. And you've got all these actors and actresses that are great. Also, exposition and voiceover really do the work. It's used to do most of the work, getting you from place to place. Which, like, it's a movie. You could show me these things, but no, because of budget, we're gonna have all this ADR that's gonna happen.
Right, and it's not like narrative. It's not somebody like coming on and reading some
sorta is
exposition.
but it's
It's more like
exposition.
dialogue that's overheard, and stuff like that. But yes,
but it's both. It's both, because sometimes exposition and sometimes it's like the narration from something like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
Like, well, look at George down there, blah blah blah.
Oh God.
Like,
yes.
Like, I guess we can't really, I guess the Satan powers really aren't what we wanted. Like, what? Why are we? If you can see everything, it's such a strange, like I said, with furrowed brow, I watch this because it just has so many choices where you're going, there's bits in here that would make something more interesting than the sum of its parts.
Yeah.
But we're constantly, something happens and it hamstrings that, okay, now we're into it. And it just, I don't know. It's not great. It's interesting to see, this is somebody's take on what we do to a made for TV sequel. But
yeah.
oof.
Thank you. I mean, and feel free to join me in keeping going in this, because that's a really confusing thing to me. If I were to say the one real, because I watch a lot of made for TV horror, and think about the stuff that we've
Mhm.
like really enjoyed watching, like Satan's School for
Sure.
Girls and stuff, right? Satan's School for Girls is about one story. Girl's gonna a girl commits suicide, her sister goes to the school incognito to try to figure out what happened, uncovers Satanists, right? This movie, for some reason, all it had to do, I mean, it's a tall order to follow up Rosemary's Baby, okay, fine. But you could say, you know what, we're going to be exploitative and do something kind of funky. All you had to do was pick a plot and follow it for 2 hours. And instead, what it does is this really ambitious idea that I don't think pays off, because you're left with is a 2 hour movie that, for me, felt like it was starting over and starting over and starting over almost to the end, and
Mhm.
then it's over. And Julia points
Or
out,
ending several times.
well, and you think about, like, in the
Mhm.
70s, you had those big mini series that would follow like multiple generations. And so, yeah, at every new episode, you're suddenly with a different set of characters and stuff like that. This is almost like
Sure.
that, but it's not. It's 1 2 hour. I felt sad for them, because I felt like, look, guys, just tear up the second 2/3 of this, or tear up any two of the three storylines and just stick with one and make it an hour long and a 2 hour movie, and that'll be fine. So that's the main problem, because the rest of it, you're exactly right. It's often goofy, but the main problem is that it's like satanic jello. You just can't grab onto it, and it's just and the movie just keeps moving on. Anyway, let's get into
Somebody
it.
That
should
should have been
market.
a pull quote.
Yeah, somebody
It's
should
like
Yes.
market.
satanic jello.
Well, and then there should have been merch. There should have been satanic Jell-O that went with it.
Yes.
Uh,
Nailing satanic jello to the wall. One of my favorite characters, by the way, and I know this is just taken totally, but you said, in a sense, we have this idea that you could have a road warrior, or a road wandering son of Satan with his like best friend who's like super Christian, called no less than Peter Simon, and wearing all white all the time. And that, you really get the impression, well, that's a solid idea. I would watch that show. I would watch at least a couple episodes of that show.
Poor
And
yeah,
Peter
well,
Simon.
it almost looks like they're gonna do some, Rosemary's Baby, Son of Satan,
yes,
kind of thing, and then that doesn't like maybe they want to. Maybe that was it. Doesn't say. I haven't found any. I kind of looked around because I was curious if that was ever planning. I didn't see anything that said that.
So
But
should we
by
go
the
back
time you
and
get to the third part,
yeah, we're
you're
gonna
just
start
like,
over.
what's
Uh,
going? Yeah.
so
yeah, I was gonna say,
so
should we go back and
So
do the plot, because
so
yes.
we
in case
we
anybody's
begin
confused.
with a recap of sorts of Rosemary's Baby. And the movie assumes that you know Rosemary's Baby pretty well, because one thing good about Rosemary's Baby, other than that it's a work of genius, is that it's also super duper simple. I mean, because just think about how little plot Rosemary's Baby had. It was these sort of hoity-toity Satanists in a nice apartment complex make a deal with this actor that they'll help his career if he will let them influence the pregnancy of his wife, and they'll live in the nice building, and she'll have a Satan baby. That's it. That's the whole movie. And then it's over, and they have the Satan baby. That's the end. So this opens with a recap of that, and we get none other than Patty Duke again, huge star, huge, and she's on the run with the baby. And I have to say, right at the beginning, that you're kind of, I feel terrible about this, because obviously these are choices that somebody is making with money and time and equipment, but some of this stuff is just not working for me. There's all the voiceover stuff that's recapping all the Ave Satani stuff from the movie. And then, as Patty Duke is sort of on the run, there's all of this weird, like, slow motion running and stuff to suggest a sort of dreaminess to her fleeing that, to me, never conveys anything but impatience on my part.
Mhm.
I get it. I get where the story is going. Can we get on with it?
Well, and
Yeah.
and then of course, like you said, they're trying to recap the movie, but they of course can't have very much in the way of visuals because that's a different. They don't really want to call attention to the fact that it's a different actor, so they
Yeah.
just have her doing no, like oh no, oh no, and it just kind of like it feels weird. But she does as good a job as she possibly can on this. It's just
Yeah.
as in terms of being the mother. So then, yeah, so then they move. Fast forward
She
to.
flees the Satanists and she goes living incognito in wherever the hell she lives. I mean, she moves somewhere else and she's on the run. Go ahead. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, so then we have, her older child, and this is again one of those times when there's so many possibilities because I guess part of the problem is that I'm living in a world that has the Omen in it, so I keep
Mm-hmm.
expecting it to be the Omen. You know what I mean? Like, I keep expecting there to be stuff about this kid being kind of satanic, and in fact, we do get some of that. We get him like getting really mad while she's on the phone, getting really mad at some kids who are bullying him and kind of like throwing them with his mind, but then he doesn't kill them. He's just kind of like, this just get away from me. Which so that's like it's almost like he's going to be Dexter, or not even Dexter, but like who's somebody who could have been a bad guy but ends up being a good guy. I'm trying to think, but it's like that. It's like he's meant to be. He has superpowers and he's meant to be evil because he's the
Yeah.
kid of Satan or whatever. But then he ends up not being evil, and or at least he's fighting it. So you're like, okay, so maybe he's going to be the kind of more of a like a superhero kind of character, like more of a good guy character. But we're not committed to that either. Anyway, so that's so for now. So he's a kid, and that's what. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about that. The
Well,
kid life
yeah.
before
So
before Tina Louise takes over.
right. So thanks for mentioning Tina Louise. Yeah. So Patty Duke's on the run. She's incognito, and to this extent, it's also like Race with the Devil, which we saw, where you go from town to town, and there's a good chance that Satan has his fingers in the local pies, and so Patty Duke is on the run with the kid in the bus, and they stop. And they get help from local prostitute Tina Louise, Margine, she plays.
Ginger from
Yes,
Really Good
Tina
Violence.
Louise. Oh my gosh. So she looks wonderful too, by the way. Tina Louise looks amazing.
She always looked amazing.
She's so tall. It's funny to me how she towers over Patty Duke, and she has all that hair. Which I don't know how much of that hair is real, but she's just sort of stunning. And Tina Louise very quickly calls. Tina Louise manages to, through a complicated bunch of stuff, Tina Louise manages to fall under the
It's not that complicated. She just picks up the phone, and the Satanists are like chanting, and somehow that
yeah, and she gets in with them.
gets her under
They
their
do a deal with
spell.
her. Basically, they say, "Why don't you take over the Satan baby from Rosemary, and we'll make your life good?" And so she goes with that. And so then comes literally, to me, the only terrifying part of this whole damn movie, which is that bus.
But also
Because
dumb. I don't
yeah,
think it's terrifying. I think it could
okay,
have
so
been
explain it to me.
terrifying.
Explain
I
the
think it has so
explain the
much
bus scene.
potential to be terrifying, but it totally falls apart.
Okay,
Because the thing is, so when the kids are or when he's kind of having the fight with the bullies,
yeah.
she's on the phone with was it with the baby daddy, like with the
Uh,
guy? Was she on the phone with Guy, or is
George
that?
Maharis plays Guy.
Yeah, is that who she's on the
Um,
phone with? I think so. But
I
anyway,
can't
whoever she's on
remember.
the phone with, she is not paying attention. When she turns back around, the kid has been fighting, so she grabs the kid, and Tina Louise says, "Hey, come to my trailer over here." So they go in there, and she's like, and she goes out there, and she picks up the phone that is still off the hook, and hears the Satanists, and then gets under their spell. So when she returns to the trailer, the mom says, what happened with the kids? Did he hurt anybody? And she says, yeah, she killed them. And of course he did not.
Yes, Tina
He killed them.
Louise
Of course
lies
he
to
did
Patty
not kill
Duke.
them. He didn't even injure
Yeah.
them. We see that so that's the beginning of Tina Louise becoming, allied with the Satanists. And so
Yeah,
then she says, hey, let's take my car and we'll go someplace. So they get in the car,
flag down a
and
bus somewhere a few miles away to
yeah,
avoid the angry mob.
and then
Yeah,
for whatever reason that I will never understand, the mom gets on without the kid, and Tina Louise is holding the kid, and I guess what she's going to hand him up or something stupid, And she gets on, and the bus closed, the doors closed, it starts driving away. And rather than try to open the door or try to go to the driver or whatever, she goes to the back of the bus and just screams at the back of the bus, the Graduate style, I guess. And, like, well, not really, because they don't scream at the back of the bus, but you know what I'm saying. She's at the back of the bus, like screaming out the window. And that's the end of her. Like, we don't, and then so she goes back to the front of the bus, and there's no driver, and she screams again. But she doesn't try to drive the bus. She doesn't try to open the door. She doesn't try to do anything. And then we never hear from her again. So we don't know, did the bus wreck? Did it get raptured? Like, what happened? So that
Well, that's
whole
a really
thing
good. Okay, so let's stop
really
and think
bothers
about
me.
this bus scene,
Yeah.
because you're right. You have picked it apart, which is that Patty Duke is on this bus, and if we're meant to take this literally, then what a normal human being would be doing is, like, probably upon realizing there's no driver of the bus, she would get
No
behind the
driver on the
wheel and
bus?
maybe try to hit the brakes. No,
No, I'm
I
just
see
thinking of
that.
that song.
That's a Joni Mitchell quotation. Very
Joni
good.
Mitchell.
I
Yep.
see what you did there. Yeah. But
I mean,
she
she should probably at least try to open the door.
any
Right?
number
Yeah,
of these
something.
things. Yeah, I mean, and they don't.
But as it stands, I think the bus just drives to hell.
I
'Cause
guess it
later
goes
she's
to
in dream
hell.
sequences.
Is it on a highway to hell?
It's
Possibly. I mean,
yes,
by the
and
time when it enters the highway, yes.
yeah, and and it's all very dreamy. Once again, we have some of this weird, slow motion occasionally, and weird stuff like that. So and by the way, the weirdness of all of this is what leads me to feel like, this is all like takes half an hour into the movie, and I still feel like we're in a prologue, in a sense, like this is all so.
Well, it
But
is a prologue because most of the movie will be about adult
yeah,
Satan Jews.
but it's given its own name. It's called The Book of Rosemary. I would have been perfectly happy to have Patty Duke, who, by the way, again, a get, right? Just go ahead and have a whole damn movie about Patty Duke running with this baby. She can lose because it's 1970s. You can have bummer endings, but I mean, I'd be perfectly fine with her going from town to town with this baby, and trying to escape the Satanists. That would be great. That would be
Yeah, you could have like the Incredible Hulk style where he keeps doing creepy things and they kind of get run out of the town because everybody's freaked
right.
out.
In a sense, it
Right.
would be like
Well, they allude.
Race with the Devil.
It feels like that's where it's headed.
Yeah.
It feels like that's where it's headed in the other ones as well. But
Yes.
but it would lead to a lot more ambiguity as far as, is she able to control this? What is her role as a mother? It could be more like The Omen.
Yeah.
What do you do if this is your child, etc. So that stuff could go somewhere, but we've decided we're going to do this 3-part bit.
Yeah.
And move forward into adulthood. And I think you're right. I think it seems like it could possibly, or it could have been 2 or 3 sequels.
Yes.
Her on the run and then ultimately losing the child to the powers.
Yeah.
Could have been one thing, or could have been a series. That could have been a whole movie. Each one of these could have been a movie, but that I guess time and money wasn't there. So let's wrap it up. Let's put these 3 things out there.
Yeah,
And
it really
those
feels like
choices are just bizarre.
three like 40-minute movies, I suppose. So yeah, as soon as we know that Patty Duke is on this bus to hell, and so the baby is left with Tina Louise, then we flash forward to the new section called The Book of Adrian. And now we enter what feels like the main plot of the film, until we get to the end, and then it gets weird again.
Mhm.
But this feels like most of the movie. And we have adult Adrian, the baby, Stephen McHattie, and he has a best friend. And so he's a son of Satan. Like you said, he's got a burnt cross on his chest, because for reasons that his mom put a cross on his chest, and his Satanism burned his flesh with it. And his buddy is David Huffman.
But he still wears it.
He still wears it. Yes.
Well, it
Yeah,
doesn't burn
and
his
it
flesh
doesn't burn
anymore.
him now.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Right.
Which that's unexplained. Like, why?
Well,
is it because he's become more good?
As the powers that be in Satanism, the Satan crew, which is mainly Ray Milland and Ruth Gordon, they are basically disappointed that Steve McHattie has not turned out to be.
They talk a lot about like, he's not the Satan baby we hoped.
Right.
Ugh.
He's a
They're the best
disappointment.
thing.
You know,
They're
you
the best
kinda-
thing
you
about
kinda-
this movie. They're
You kind
hilarious.
of want to go like, they kind of suck as Illuminati Satan people too, because they can never seem to. They spend a lot of time. There's a lot of them kind of setting all that up, and then once it happens, there's like, well, I guess he sucked as a Satan baby. Go back to the drawing board on that one. But it's kind of like also on
Blame
you.
Guy.
Like, how did you
It's
miss
Guy's
him?
fault.
How did you not have, like, why did you mess it up with Guy? Like, all of that stuff is like, it's kind of also on you, terrible Satanists.
Yes.
Is there any, especially since you got to get the idea there in the elite part of it? Like, yeah, sorry, devil. We just, what can you do? I guess he's not the baby we hoped for.
It's so
Again.
weird that there's a thing going on, and I can't tell if the movie hasn't really. I feel like this needed a lot more meetings where the writers hung around with a whiteboard and thought about what any of this stuff means. Like, for instance, there's clearly a funny irony that they've picked up from the 68 movie, where it's funny if Ray Milland and Ruth Gordon kind of like talk about pop culture plus Satanism and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So there's
I would say
irony
that's
there.
the best thing. The best thing about the movie is they're
Right.
funny.
And
It's
so
those
they think
funny,
that that's
those funny
cool.
characters.
But there's not like, I could use a better sense of what Ray Milland's big plan is. I mean, I guess to some extent he says, because one thing they get into here is that they spend some time with Guy, who has become a super popular actor, but also a guy who's willing to do errands for the Church of Satan in exchange
Well, because
for
he has
anything.
to. Yeah, exactly. Because they'll
And
take away his.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
also even his career, like he had but it's weird because you get the impression he had a career. Now it's kind of waning. And
maybe that's the case.
The more Adrian isn't their super child they'd hoped for, the more his career seems to take, because he has a lot of, eventually he has that whole long speech about, I'm still popular, right? Like you should make me your demon. You should do more. He's kind of whiny and crappy.
I love
too.
the feminism of the fact that Guy has always been a pompous, self-important bitch. I mean,
Why is that?
Guy.
Did you say feminism?
Yeah,
Why is that feminism?
Because I feel like it's a critique of the powers that be basically rewarding incompetence. And I think that's a critique.
Okay, but I don't get the feminism part, but that's okay.
Okay.
So yeah, and then he ends up dying, by the way. So he was right that he needed to keep doing the errands for Satan, because once he doesn't, they're like, okay, we're done with you.
But in this section, you've got basically, Steve McHattie's grown up, and he's kind of so some of the write-ups online refer to him as a rock star. I don't get the impression he's anything but.
He is at the casino. He is.
So he is a rock
That's
star.
The whole point. Is he's a rock star at the casino, and pretty much
because Tina Louise runs a big casino in the desert that apparently is quite popular.
That's a castle.
Yes, it's cool. By the way, I was not able to figure out if this is a fake, if it's a standing castle, if it's a real cool thing in the desert that you can film at, or if it was invented for this movie. No idea, but it's a neat set. It really is. I have to say that was very cool. And Tina Louise has become a much more sort of regal presence. She's wearing her hair a lot higher and is a lot more chill. And
she's not wearing it higher. She's just wearing a more conservative hairdo.
Yeah. Okay. And
less sexy.
Sure. And Peter Simon, who is again the ultra devout best friend of Adrian, they hang out together, and they're getting in trouble with the law by speeding and yada yada. And Adrian is going through just all kinds of like intense feelings. He seems to be really grappling.
And his name is Adrian. His Satan name, but Andrew is the name that his mother called him.
That his mother called him.
Becomes important later.
Right. And basically his birthday is coming up, so there's going to be this confluence of a whole bunch of events. The Satan people are going to show up for his midnight birthday bash. And this section where they are showing up in their cars really, really, really reminded me of the sunglasses wearing Satan people showing up at Frankenfurter's place in Rocky Horror Picture Show. Because they all kind of gather. And
that's the other thing is in this whole deal is it never, I mean, I will say it never goes quite where you think it's going to go, which I don't necessarily, sometimes that's good. And in this case, I didn't quite feel the same.
I agree.
Didn't get the same impression. Because it also felt like, his friend knows what's up.
Right.
And wants to kind of influence and go, hey, and you get the idea that there could be this confrontation, or that they would try to there would be kind of a battle for his soul between, hey, my the Christian side knows who you are, and we want to get you back, and like we think you have, like you don't have to be the son of Satan. But they drop that too, and then that's
right.
Like, just
I think the problem is that
there's some neat stuff. it just doesn't go. They just,
Yeah.
well, I don't like that anymore.
Well, I
That's
think the
it.
problem is that you and I and Julia are reacting to the fact that David Huffman as Peter Simon is one of the few spots of like energy in this section. So you're
Mm.
like, no way they're just gonna randomly kill him to enrage Stephen McHattie. That makes no sense at all. Like you can't imagine that that's what's gonna happen. This is where your Chips episode thing comes in, and I know exactly the episode you're talking about, because yeah, there's Adrian's birthday is happening, so the Satan people are doing the chanting and everything, and so they want to kind of bring Satan into his body finally. And they've also said if it doesn't work out, we're going to sacrifice it. And so, and
Right,
to
but
prepare him,
also
yeah,
they go the other part of this that is the whole satanic panic rock and roll. Like I've heard that they, real rock and roll stars, all the top labels have a Satan room. This is like straight from like
right,
Jack Chick kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
yes,
Have a Satan
Right.
room, and they sign their souls to the devil
And
for the.
they
Now
dress
they
like
sign. You
mime.
sign away. Yeah,
They wear mime
they
makeup.
sign. Well, in this case, but like there's this whole thing that's come about in that realm where there's rumors of like, oh, you sell your soul to the record label, and you just sign your money, which I guess might as well be your soul, right?
yeah,
I mean, and you do in the case of, hey, we're gonna get 4 albums out of you, even if you hate making these albums now for us, and you're not gonna see any money. Like all the truth part isn't so much your soul, although your artistic soul, yes, definitely. Anyway, there's all this stuff, and so they even have this kind of bit where they say something like, well, it probably won't work out, but he's obviously a dud. But we
yeah,
have hope because maybe if he rocks out, I'm
right,
paraphrasing, of course, but
because
Yes.
the
it
idea
will,
being like if he rocks out, maybe there's enough devil in this music
yeah. They actually said
that he'll.
it will result in
And
corruption of the
that's more or less
innocent. Yeah,
that's more or less the thrust is, well, we're pretty sure he's not gonna, he's up in his room, he's a terrible devil baby, whatever. We certainly put our eggs in the wrong, like we put our hopes on the wrong devil baby for sure. And then they go,
yeah,
well, maybe if we put my makeup on him and he becomes a rock star, like that's enough. Like devil music can be devil music, and maybe that'll just put just enough Satan up in here that he'll come back.
oh my god.
And that's why they do all this whole thing, and he gets up and he's gonna rock out, and then
His mime makeup.
that doesn't
Well,
work
but before you
quite
move
well
on to
either.
what
But
happens when he gets out there, I just want to spend a moment about the notion that they're gonna he's painted up like a quote unquote rock star, which in the world of this movie, who the hell writes this stuff, Tony? That's what I'm trying to figure out. In the world of this movie means that he's gonna wear a big open shirt and no, it's like a tank top kind of thing. And his
Literally looks like a mime with the black.
his face
It's the
is painted all white
black
with
sleeveless
red
shirt.
dots. Yeah, and a
yeah, but it
black.
doesn't even look cool like Kiss makeup. Well, probably
Right.
so they wouldn't get sued.
I'm
But
telling you, you keep ignoring my mime thing. He is dressed as a mime. Like
Yes.
anything, whatever you
no,
imagine
you're
as
right.
a mime, that's
Yeah.
what he looks like.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. What I'm saying is that it's not, if you're going to paint somebody, it seems like you would paint them more like Kiss, or
Yeah.
You could
maybe
do
even more like
anything.
they were in Hawkwind, like some
Yeah.
kind of
You could do
any number of
flames on his
things.
face. You could make his face like it could have stripes. I mean, anything. But
Or like
instead,
Ozzy Osbourne,
it's
whatever. Yeah.
right. Well, yeah, just big sort of black around the eyes. But instead, what you have are these little, and it reminds me of when the people putting together Halloween costumes had to like make a hobo. And they're like, I don't know, a cigar, I
he's-
guess. Like hobos smoke cigars, right? Like it really just feels so like groping in the dark as to like, I don't know, what's a rock thing? I feel
Mimes.
it's just so funny to me how completely
Wrong they got it.
it
he's
has
not
it has
even cool like
yeah,
Arthur Brown is cool.
right.
Like Arthur Brown paint, like Arthur Brown, he's still, I saw him a few
Well,
years
Brian
ago.
De Palma
Up
invented
to a
a
few years ago,
whole
he's still rocking. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
even if you didn't want to get sued by Kiss, a mime is not.
No, it's
But it goes
intended
back
for
to, we
people.
keep doing this thing.
Yeah.
Like, just somebody's in LA.
Right.
There are rock acts in LA. Like even before there's the internet,
Yeah.
and you can get access to promo photos. You could buy a bunch of magazines. Like someone out there has seen rock stars.
Yes. You can
At
surely
least one
hire
person
one
involved with this
And
for
movie.
some dollars a
Satan,
day. Yeah.
satanic rock stars, quote unquote. There's still we haven't reached death metal yet in that respect, but there's stuff out there.
Well, and that's one of the reasons
And
why the
why
film.
this is just
Yeah. Well,
I
but
don't
it's one of those cases
mm.
where you have these choices made, and each one of these like one person said like that a great movie is something like 3 good scenes and no bad ones. I might be paraphrasing wrong, but mainly. And the opposite, kind of like a bad movie, is probably where you have multiple scenes, or I would just say multiple choices, where you go, that is an exactly wrong choice that is very difficult to come back from. The goofiness of this actor who is doing his best, Stephen McHattie,
Yeah, he does.
Sure.
excellent actor, doing his best, but he's asked to do some crazy ass shit. Just get up and wave his arms around and get taken away by the music as people like shake their booties
Yeah,
and like get
it's
carried
like he's
away.
doing who did I say, Jason, when I was watching it? He seems like he's doing a cross between Mick Jagger
Yeah.
and oh gosh, now I forgot who the other person was. But anyway, it's just this like crazy kind of dance. It's really, it's not bad. It's just crazy.
It also
Uh-huh.
Go ahead, Julia. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt
no.
you.
I was just going to describe what the scene was, but it's like, it's just kind of like a ravey kind of dance club. But anyway, go ahead.
And it's
Yeah, he's
supposed to
like,
be
do some
appalling.
rock star
Yeah.
things.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Right.
also they commit the cardinal sin, and I know why this happens, because when
Okay.
you're this is a cardinal sin of like me being a snob about musician stuff, and it happens all the time, especially the lower the budget, the more you just
Uh-huh.
kind of go with it. So you'll have a band, and probably you may have music that's either there or you didn't clear the rights to it or
Yeah.
something. And sometimes actors and actresses know how to play instruments and can kind of, maybe they're going along with it, or maybe they don't, and it looks kind of goofy. But whatever's on set is not the music that
Right.
is there when you cut it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so you get these people playing this song that's like nothing nothing they're doing on the fretboard or on the keyboard is anywhere near this
That's really funny, Tony.
supposedly
I didn't
ultimate
even know
Satan
that.
song.
That's
Sure.
amazing.
Oh well, I
Well,
mean,
but-
if you're like that, this is me being a musician, and so I'm
No, but that's
picky
great.
about this
I'm
crap,
glad.
right?
I'm glad you shared that
Absolutely.
with us, because I
And
so
there's several different reasons why it happens, but it's just that when that does happen, it's just like, come on, man! Like you've seen people play music.
Yeah, related to that is that I thought for sure what they were going to do, because earlier he noodles around with a guitar a little bit. So I thought for sure he was going to be like, oh, now I've been kind of, because we forgot to mention the fact that this happens after the rock and roll thing happens after they do the whole ceremony. So he
Mhm.
supposedly is now going to be taken over by Satan. So they're like, oh, okay, let's
Right.
let Satan take over with the rock star thing. So I thought that he would suddenly, because of Satan power, have ability to play guitar way better. So
gonna
I thought he was
rock.
going to grab
Yeah.
the guitar and rock
Yeah.
out. But no, he just does
No.
his little dance.
Ugh.
Well,
I wish he
again,
had
the whole
had a
point
tambourine,
is
honestly. But
this music, and they're all watching like, I guess there's this house band. Fine. All the Illuminati people are just like, yeah, yes, go ahead, because they've
Yeah.
already gone. Well, the ceremony didn't work out. What a dud. I guess
Yeah.
let him do his Satan thing on stage, and that'll bring out the devil. And
Yes.
then we get what we get out of that business too.
Mhm.
But his dad and everybody else is just watching, like it is like watching the house band that you're not as much into, or like the band at a county fair. Like, and they're, it's funny too, because that band is constantly rocking out in every scene where they're in the casino, and the women in it are dressed in tight, sparkly red stuff, and they're really selling it.
Yeah.
But also, he actually misses because he feels bad because he's got an onset of potential Satanism.
Yes.
He gets sick of his stomach, whatever, misses the gig he's supposed to go to original. But like,
Yeah.
dude, you didn't come up and do your job as a front person, which
Yeah.
evidently he's not that integral into the band anyway, because he's never in the band until that one point. Like,
Yes.
the band rocks their asses off in every scene in the
I
background.
think it's possible that
and then he just joins whenever the hell he feels like joining.
Dancing around.
because he's the nephew. He's the layabout
Right.
rich ass son of the owner of the casino, and so he gets to front the band
Sure.
whenever he feels like getting up on stage. That is, oh God, that just is loathsome to me.
No. And so then what
Right.
happens with his buddy?
Okay, so anyway, David Huffman.
Simon Peter, whatever his name
Meanwhile,
is. What's his name?
yeah,
Paul Simon. What's his name?
Simon Peter.
It's not Paul Simon.
Peter Simon
Peter.
is actually what he's called.
Peter Simon.
So Peter Simon knows that Satan's stuff is up, and so he goes out and he winds up getting into an altercation. A big storm has come. He gets into an altercation with Guy, the father of Adrian,
Guy.
George Maharis. And George Maharis gets lucky and picks up a downed power line and just shocks David Huffman.
Electrocutes.
Electrocutes. And I have to mention that this is super weird because it's not directed in any way that real, like if you think about in The Thing, in John Carpenter's The Thing, how I apologize, who's the older actor that plays the doctor?
You mean Wilford Brimley?
Wilford Brimley. So Wilford Brimley is really good with the flares, where he's holding a flare and he keeps his arms super wide and like, is doing all this pantomime about how powerful the flares are, when he's using it and everything. So there's always this sort of dramatic aspect to his acting. And that was one of the things that Carpenter and in his commentary was really impressed with. So here, George Maharis does literally nothing interesting. He picks it up and he seems to just kind of go, "Oh, did you want this?" and goes, "Dunk," and David Huffman falls down dead. And
also,
yes.
all of the buildup of the storm is coming, and power lines are going to be down. The dramatic beats are the same dramatic beats that we might see in something like Little House on the Prairie when a storm is coming.
Right.
Like the way, because it's shot the certain way and it feels that way. By the way, we didn't go back to the part where earlier, before all of this, we do get a little bit of devilry where he picks a fight at a bar
that's right,
gas station, and he's gonna get his ass beat by these biker guys and satanizes them into like fighting each other and like which is kind of what he did as a kid. And so you kind of, and then his friend goes, "Hey, like that whole back and forth of like, I really know what happened, but I'm going to pretend I didn't and ask you what happened." There's all that cool interplay that then again, because of this scene the end of this scene goes nowhere.
Yes. So it's just underwhelming.
Like, there's this like, "Oh, that's interesting. Like what's going to go on there?" And then womp.
The whole battle for his soul. It doesn't happen. That should
and Adrian, the only payoff here, and it also is unconvincing because it's not staged particularly well, is Peter Simon being electrocuted. He looks like he's being crucified. He's visible through the window from the stage, and Adrian is freaking out about that with good reason. And then I think he goes unconscious at that point. I think that's the end of the segment. Is the death of David Huffman. I do want to take a moment to mention something interesting about David Huffman. So David Huffman, I had read about this a couple of years ago because he showed up in a lot of stuff in the 70s and the 80s. And if you watched Firefox, he was the guy who was sort of the handler for Clint Eastwood and stuff like that. Good actor. And he died at 40 years old. In I think like 84 or so, because it was just a freak thing where he somebody did a robbery. He like kind of chased after them, got out of his car, chased after the guy turned around and stabbed him, and boom, David Huffman died. That was it. Isn't that crazy? That was just like in seconds. Like it was just this freakish, horrible thing. So that's what happened to David Huffman. But and Stephen McHattie is still with us. So anyway, Huffman dies, and that's the end of the segment. And we go into the Book of Andrew, and we're in yet another plot. Like literally, I think Tony, you said it right. It's like the first section is its own movie, and then another movie. It's like this is a trilogy, except for that they've been crammed down into like 40 minutes each.
And we don't really need this last one. We could have just really developed those other two sections much more, so that we have the battle for the soul in that whole business.
Absolutely.
And we don't really need this whole, oh, now I'm in an institution and I want to be called Andrew thing. It's just odd. I don't know.
Yeah, it's
Or
super odd.
you
Yeah.
could have also made a movie where he somehow his mom left him or whatever, and he was left in the care of a mental institution for his life, like almost a Michael Myers.
Right.
Hey, this devil kid grew up in an institution, and he gets out and doesn't know how to deal with the world because he doesn't know he's a devil kid until,
Right.
hey, I'm out like getting an apartment and now I have devil things going on. Like and the secret society's keeping track of him. Like, you could also make that movie.
Yeah.
But we decided to make 3 movies, and none of them are quite well
Yeah,
paced
they're not
or well kind of
they're
put
well developed.
together.
Not well developed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, any one of these would have been fine. And I am completely mystified at so somebody had a good idea, or maybe a bad idea. My point is, somebody had a powerful idea where they were like,
Mhm.
"Hey, let's separate it into thirds, and each one is a totally different story." And somebody somewhere along the way should have said, "You know what? Actually, I don't think that works. Don't do that." That's what should have happened. And
That's also like why I'm fascinated. I just, again, I kind of try to poke around, but I didn't come across a
mm,
thing that was like, oh yeah, this is totally supposed to be a pilot, or
right,
something like that. It just is 3 segments
yeah,
together.
yeah,
Because it would make
uh,
sense if that was an idea. Like, here's the arc that we're going to do in the pilot. If this makes it to series, here's what we're going to do.
yeah,
But
yeah. It
that
feels
never
it's so
really
funny how we've talked about how
comes
sometimes
across.
you'll have TV miniseries that get crammed down into a European 90-minute cut, for the movies. It does feel kind of like that, right? Except for that it didn't exist. That's just so strange. So I
Yeah.
wonder, your instincts, my instincts as storytellers, makes me think maybe somewhere out there originally there were some scripts, like 3 of them. And somebody's like, "Hey, let's take little bits of all of this." Anyway, somebody should have stepped in and go, "No, fellas, you're following up an award-winning, very simple movie, Rosemary's Baby, with a ridiculously complicated movie it's laughable how
But we have
ridiculous. And
Oscar winners in it, so it should work out fine.
well, that's what's just heartbreaking
Sure.
about this. Okay, so yes, Adrian wakes up in a hospital, and now he's going to be calling himself Andrew. He's in a mental hospital, and we learn many things. We learn that a lot of the cast of the previous section are now dead. Tina Louise died off screen, and she's gone. And now there's a pretty nurse named Donna Mills who's taking care of him in the
Well, the
hospital
the nurse
while
is
he's
played
tied
by
up.
Donna Mills. She's not named Donna
Yes, I'm
Mills.
sorry. She's named Ellen, and she's played by Donna Mills, and she's like listening to him tell his disjointed stories about satanic stuff and whatever.
But she
And
actually is a Satanist and wants to have a Satan baby.
yeah, but that's a twist. Right now we think that she's just like really into this guy that she has to take care of, and so she decides to run away with him. And then when they get to the hotel, then she forces him to have sex, even though he doesn't really want to, because she wants to get pregnant with another Satan baby, because she's actually
It's
kind of
also strange too, because they decided to do this kind of cutaway thing where she's more like a harpy instead of just
yeah,
making her a succubus. They're
right,
like, oh well, let's cut to this desert scene where she's
right.
got eagle
Man, that was
talons
weird, man.
as a
That was
harpy. Or we don't do any of that, and she's just, we do some lighting and she's a succubus. But no, let's get more metaphorical. It's, again, the choices are just,
yeah,
it's interesting. I
Well,
mean,
and
they went for an interesting visual, but it's still the
right, because they cut to the desert, and you've got the harpy that's clawing at his chest and drawing blood like he's
yeah,
Prometheus, right? And then
right.
but that's so strange, because what does that kind of heightened poetic visualization have to do at all with this also being the movie where they painted him up like a mime and he wandered around like a rock star? I mean, I don't This is a very weird film.
And there's so many times when he remembers, like, his mother and the bus thing, that never pays off. Like, he never confronts anybody and goes, "What did you do to my mother? Where is she?" We never find
Right?
out what happened to her. We never like, it would have been great if she turns out to be alive somewhere. I mean, anything with that, but none of that gets paid off.
He should be mildly upset that Tina Louise, the woman who raised him, is dead. Yeah,
And
it feels
his birth dad that he just found out about, or did he even? I don't
right.
even.
Oh my God. So yeah. Guy decides that Guy, which is George Maharis, his dad, decides that he's going to, if I understand correctly, Guy comes to kill them both because he wants to bring an end to all of this all the satanic nonsense that he's been a part of since the late 60s. And he fails. He fails to kill either Ellen, who is now impregnated with a Satan baby, or
He
Adrian.
thinks he kills I mean, he runs her over, and
Yes,
Adrian
that's
thinks
true.
she's dead, and then she turns out not to be dead, which was
Well,
really interesting and
at
strange.
first we're led to believe it's just a car that the Satanists have possessed,
Right.
Yes, like
and
the
it
first one
drives around
does.
like crazy, and it hits her, and we think that that's her. But the other thing though is I get the impression, because when the car drives around the parking lot, they dodge it a lot, it hits her, because the cops show up and he goes, "Hey, there's nobody in the car," and it ends up being Guy.
Yeah.
But I got the impression also that probably Guy was already dead and just not, like,
Oh,
at
that's
some point Guy
interesting.
was
I hadn't thought
dead,
about that.
and the car was doing all this crazy, because it does like stunts and
Yeah.
drives real fast and everything, and I don't,
It was just a
especially
way
with
to
the way
dispose
he's
of Guy's
convinced that
body.
it's a it's a demon car,
Yeah.
like the
Mhm.
car. And it's a surprise, like, oh wow, Guy was in there. I think by the time that the car is driving around like crazy, that guy's been deviled already.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
That
very
know.
was the
It
impression I got.
that's the problem
Maybe.
is that nobody ever explains any of it. That's the
Well,
trouble.
they explain a lot of things, but not any of that. They
Yeah,
do
isn't
Yeah.
all
that
the
funny?
other sides of, like,
They explain a
there's
lot
so
of
much
stuff considering how many
exposition.
confusing things are left. Yes.
And just them talking back and forth. They're like, well, I guess we'll do some other devil stuff and maybe it'll work out. Well, can we go sightseeing? Well, okay. And we'll do part of that as a voiceover. And then, again, just so many choices. And,
Yes.
but not only that, but, she survives, but he runs off and he can go into, if we continue this, he wandered, he has the
Yeah,
potential,
he
he's
ran
wandering
off.
around, and they're missing everything but the Incredible Hulk theme at the end.
Yes, you're totally right. He ran off into the sunset. So he'll go
Yeah, he
be,
goes off in the
as you
dark and
mentioned.
then holds up against he's holding himself up on a chain link fence
Yes.
at the end, going, "What have I done with my life, and why am I this bedeviled person?" And at first they do almost a bait and switch, because they go, "Well, we couldn't get him, and we do need to find him because we need parts of his body." What they mean is they just need to father a baby.
Yeah.
And that's like, oh, okay. It's not his heart or any other. It's like, oh no,
The
we
sperm
need
donor.
that part. Yeah,
Which
we
Sperm
works
need the
donor.
because now they
sperm
have a new
donor.
baby. And
Yeah,
I agree with you, by the
Maybe
way,
they'll
that
do better with this one.
in Marvel
yeah.
Comics there's
That's
Damien
their hope.
Hellstrom, who's the Satan son of Satan, and he's constantly, I'm so upset with them that they killed off the Peter Simon character, because that
Yeah.
would have been the ideal traveling buddy, and so
And
anyway,
just like,
yes.
hey, what are we gonna do? Like that could have been, especially since this is the time period where we do have sort of kind of an MCU,
Yes.
of they're trying. There's a Captain America show and a Spider-Man show and a
Yeah.
Incredible Hulk. Like, they were trying something on TV. Doctor Strange, the movie,
Yes.
which I think Shout Factory just put that out to kind of go, hey, if you want some more Doctor Strange, here's this weird
Yes.
artifact
I
from
didn't
this
know there was
time
a Doctor
period.
Strange
Yeah,
movie
Peter
before this.
Hooton played him.
Oh,
I don't think I've
oh,
seen
it
it.
is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
really? I mean, it's all right. I mean, it's not. It's
He has
exactly
a
like.
swell mustache, by the way.
Oh
Like
yeah, no, it's worth watching at least once, just to see, like, this was how all the Marvel stuff was during this time period. And
mhm.
I think that's cool. It's worth checking out. It's worth watching for historical. And I remember when it came on, I was really young,
Yeah.
but comic books on TV, yeah, right. So they were trying, and this felt like all the bits feel like it could have been, Marvel. It was Marvel, right? Son of Satan.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes,
or
yes,
was that
yes.
DC?
Yeah, Son of
No, it
Satan
was
was a
Marvel,
Marvel character.
right?
We still haven't
Right.
seen him pop up in the MCU.
Sure. But I, not that this, I mean, this is Rosemary's Baby, but I felt like, again, I kept just, that's all I could think about was, this would have been, because it feels like all of the other Marvel-y kind of shows. And they had a few other superhero things. And there was like Exo, I think it was called, about this, really not so great looking exosuit that
Yes, sure. Yeah. Oh,
they were
lots of.
trying things, and this kind of felt like it could have been that, but it
Well,
wasn't.
it's disappointing to me because and I'm kind of, so I'll skip my final thoughts because I'm just going to say this now. What's disappointing to me here is, there's so many ways you could do this. You could go full exploitation, like Rosemary's Baby, complicated movie about class and wanting to and wanting to get ahead, and male and female relationships, and what a shitty husband guy is. You could do a similar thing, where whatever happened to sorry, whatever happened to look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby could be again about class and family relationships and all that stuff, and ambition, and it could be some kind of story like that. And they didn't do that. That would be the classy way to do it. Or you could do the exploitative thing, which would be to pick any one of the three stories they have here and just make it movie length. But instead, they made something super confusing and needlessly so. I just don't understand why this movie wound up the way that it did.
I feel like perhaps I'm being too too generous, but I feel like two things happen usually. Either
Yeah.
somebody just has a lot of hubris and like, this is the way I'm going to make these movies, which we've seen some big blockbusters that just go off the rails.
Yeah.
Or or we get weird choices like the choices made in Highlander 2, where you go, what?
Right.
What?
Like,
Why? Or in the case of a TV movie like this, which would have been made again, we've talked a lot about how TV movies are kind of created, and it also feels like someone somewhere said, no, this is the kind of thing we need for a Friday night. Like, I want these things, and hit these beats. I feel like really competent storytellers often meet up with, what, I need this, and this, and just make me that,
yeah.
and that leads to some of these. Now, again, maybe I'm being generous. The stories, talk to somebody who was on the team for this, they might go, oh no, I should have thought about this, and we're going with it. That's how it worked at the time.
The
But
listed
I
writer
feel
is
like
Anthony Wilson, who died 2 years after this movie, by the way, at the age of 51, which is just very unfortunate. But this guy had a long ass career. I mean, he was writing Tales of the Unexpected.
Right.
He was writing, Twilight Zone episodes. He just wrote all kinds of stuff. So whatever
or it
happened
could
here,
be
he
that
was
he
asked to do
planned
it. I
it.
guarantee you.
Or he planned it as, hey, let's do some miniseries, and they're like, nope.
Yeah.
Like,
That
you
just
got 90
feels
minutes.
logical. Yeah, you're right. That does make
because
sense.
but it does make for some baffling choices of when you watch it, and this is something I've argued with multiple people, and I've been guilty of this. I've created games that maybe weren't so hot because they said, hey, here's the budget for this, and make this, right? Or you make any number of choices. Heck, I mean, we had our own works.
Absolutely, because the client,
you and I had an
sometimes will
editor
say,
who decided to rewrite what we wrote.
Yeah.
And I got the book and was angry because
that
I let
happens
him
all the time. Yeah,
that was the choice. But these things happen, and it just it's disheartening sometimes. But those are the choices you make along the way in order to get something out there. And it's unfortunate, but I'm always inclined to believe that the culmination of everything leads to it. But the end the person viewing, like we as the viewer, don't care.
Yeah.
We only see what happened. And you and I are, people who are in the industry or who do this for a living may be a little bit more generous to go, I bet this happened. That seems like this choice, and overanalyze it. Whereas people just going into a theater or watching it on, turning it on at the time of TV, it's not their problem.
Right.
If something doesn't work quite right.
Thank you for saying that. That's so well said. It's like, it is not the audience's problem to solve that. Yeah.
And I tell people too, because sometimes you'll have somebody go, well, I really need this to be this way. Like, I need this scene to be this and that. And I'll go, well, that's going to cost a lot to shoot it that way or to do the CG on that way. And until you show that episode or that clip or the trailer or the whatever, right? That audience doesn't know they don't know anything about what you have or haven't done.
Yeah.
Right. And so it doesn't matter. Like you feel like I have to have this giant spider, right? Like that's the famous one, right? I have to have this giant spider. I have to, it has to that shoe has to be purple.
Yeah.
Well, that means we have to repaint all the other shoes to be green or whatever, like the stuff. And you go, is it really that important? Does it make it 200% better? And sometimes, I mean, I just said it. Like, I wish I would have fought back more. That's one of my biggest regrets is I let somebody rewrite a piece that I don't think ended up being as strong as it could have been. And that's still one of my biggest regrets in life, to be honest with you. So, sometimes you have to fight for things, but sometimes sometimes you don't get to, right? And sometimes the things don't really matter because the person, the people viewing it's not their problem that this was a hard shoot,
right?
Or
that's really well said.
It costs twice as much and it's unfortunate because if you're in the mix, how that is, and it's tough and it hurts, and sometimes it's painful, and sometimes it works better than others. And so you want people to understand, if you could, like, please give this a shot because we had to fight for this or that, or we had to do all these things. But in general, you can't ask the audience to care about that. It sucks sometimes as a creator, and that's always when I see these things, like, also it's hard for me to put away my creator brain to look at it that way. But that's not most people, right?
It can be fun to watch something like this because, again, I do watch a lot of 1970s TV horror films. And I'm telling you,
because it's awesome.
This one is mysterious because of all the weird choices that are not weird choices that I see elsewhere. These are weird choices that are sui generis for look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby. All right, let's get our final thoughts. We're starting with Julia. Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Look what's happened to Rosemary's Baby. What are your thoughts?
Look what's happened, indeed. I mean, I think we've kind of, beat the dead horse at this point, saying that it would have possibly been, it could have had potential to be a decent miniseries, or it had potential to be a decent movie if they'd picked one of the three movies. But anyway, so again, I don't want to for a second overlook the brilliant, the brilliant performances. I think all their Oscar winners and non-Oscar winners alike did a great job. So it's not anybody's fault there. I just, I mean, it's more of it's like a, what could have been, what could have been with Rosemary's Baby. But I really have nothing new to add to that.
Excellent. Tony, do you have any? I know that we just finished
kind of same idea. I think, and I love made for TV stuff, and I think it's fascinating. I think especially from this era where it kind of looks and feels a certain way. It's such a time capsule in so many ways, and just how you shoot things, how it's paced, all this stuff. And like I said, it meant that it had callbacks. Like I was able to make callbacks to Chips and Little House on the Prairie, and like how I think there's a shared kind of vision, because all these people, you're working in TV, and there's all these people trading and going back and forth between different sets and different, how they're editing things and how they're filming things, and who comes in the mix there. But in certain channels had their own, CBS, NBC, ABC may have had certain looks as well, I find. So but when you're coming off of a movie with kind of such a cinematic pedigree, it's hard to go back to this. And it's all of its faults are right there, and everybody, again, everybody's trying to do their best with it, but it doesn't gel, and that's unfortunate. And it's weird too, because it's not you have to find it on YouTube now. There's not as far as I know, there hasn't been a release, like physical release. Maybe
I think
maybe
that
it's on
I think the
VHS.
Well, it can make the rounds on cable, because, for instance, the version that we saw was recorded off of a British horror channel.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So satellite TV can run it, but I don't think that I think this is a film sort of like any number of films that people don't feel are worth promoting, and so And that's why I
Right.
love watching this, because I do love watching a piece of flawed art like this, because it becomes a sort of unanswerable mystery as you try to tease apart like what's going on with this stuff.
Yeah, and
Um,
I'll be honest. I would rather rent it. Like I would rather pay the $3
oh yeah,
to
oh yeah,
give people
absolutely,
who, but it just doesn't exist that way. It exists on YouTube.
yeah.
So that's, or if they were able to monetize it on YouTube, that would be okay. But I don't think the one that's up there
No,
is
if you're
monetized. I don't
listening
think
to
it's giving
this,
money to the right people. Put it that
if
way.
you're listening to this and it's a couple years from now and the movie is now available on Tubi or on Amazon Prime, and you can rent it, watch it some legitimate way, do that, and we would have as well
Right.
if it had been available
Sure.
yeah.
We had X choices for Mother's Day, and this is what we chose, and it happened to be. But yeah, man, I would, anytime I can give somebody, at least even the distributor who's going to make a royalty off a royalty off a royalty, I'd rather do that just because that's just the way you do things, like pay it forward. But
Yeah,
this doesn't exist anywhere else, so
yeah.
what can you do? It's a
Uh,
fascinating time capsule, though. That's what's
oh gosh,
interesting
yes.
about it.
Yeah, yeah. So, all right. That's Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. I am so happy that we talked about this, by the way. This is my only final thought, because again, I love even the terrible made for TV horror. There are many, many better made for TV horror movies than this one. But I love looking, because I just sort of love the snow globe aspect of pretending that I'm in the mid 70s. So let's do the endorsements. Julia, I know you've been watching a hell of a lot of Daredevil, but what else?
Yeah, well, I finished Daredevil, but my endorsement, of course, has to be Doctor Strange because it's just I have to endorse Doctor Strange. It was a good, as my best friend said. I didn't know that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was going to be a Mother's Day film, but I actually did know that. But of course, I'm not going to spoil it for anybody who hasn't gotten a chance to watch it yet. However, obviously Wanda, if you did watch WandaVision, has had kids and then lost them, so that's what that tie-in is. But it's a fun movie. It's really different from a lot of the other MCU movies because of the Sam Raimi sort of horror twist to it. And so it's neat. It definitely is a movie for MCU fans. It's not a good standalone if you've never seen an MCU movie before. But
Yeah,
yeah, I really, really enjoyed it a lot. But yes, I did finally finish Daredevil, which of course came out years ago, so it's just me catching up. And I liked the series finale. I thought it was a really good kind of close everything up. Also, finished off the series of Grace and Frankie, and God, that was a tearjerker. Really the last bunch of episodes that just
yeah.
dropped on Netflix. Man, I would not recommend it if you have someone in your life who is, has had issues with like Alzheimer's or memory loss or any of that.
Hmm.
I feel
Hmm.
unless you just want to like cry with the show, but that kind of stuff is, I think, probably a little bit of a trigger for some folks, maybe because I don't have that and I was just sobbing. So anyway, but it's a really good show, really, really, really good show. So yeah, those are my things that
That's
I've
excellent.
watched.
Thank you. Tony, what about you? What do you have to endorse?
Yeah, it did get heavier than we expected.
Hmm.
We also watched the Pentaverate, which, if you like Mike Myers stuff, it's that. But I did not expect in the Pentaverate some of the commentary to go the way it did, and I was pleasantly surprised. Like, wow, okay, yeah, it's not, because it's got all the crassness that you expect and kind of like haha joke, like wink at the camera jokes. But in general, my and that was pretty funny. It kept us entertained. But last night I watched Silent Running on Arrow
Mm,
Blu-ray, and that is, it had been a while, and oh man, this is heavy, which made me want to watch Archive again, which we did an interview a while back, like early pandemic days. I did an interview
hmm
for that, and Archive, that was kind of the inspiration. The robots in that were some of the inspiration for that. Gavin Rothery's inspiration. We talked about Silent Running, and it may remind me of that. Kind of all that discussion that we had. And Archive is great, but I watched that, and then I was watching more a Yakuza drama called Retaliation,
mm.
which was really kind of cool stuff. And I've been playing the Yakuza games recently too, so I'm pretty sure this is one of those films that the people who are making those games kind of use as a touchstone just because of the way it works and how it escalates. That was also really cool. And I haven't watched it yet, but I'm super excited because I also got in the 4K UHD of American Werewolf in London. Arrow did a box set for that, and I am just like, I can't wait. I was saving it to watch with some friends, maybe Drew. I'm hoping to have Drew over so we can watch it, because
That sounds fun. Yeah.
now that I can view 4K movies nicely, I tend to kind of go. Luckily I have a little bit of leeway, monetarily, so I can kind of collect some of these things that a few years ago maybe I wouldn't have been able to, in that respect. Because also I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. So there's a few movies I've rebought in 4K. Just because there was, and like last week I watched Heavy Metal in 4K. And that disc looks really good as well. So, but yeah, I'm super stoked to break out American Werewolf in London. But all these Arrow Blu-rays are just chock full of cool commentary and extra bits. Like, there's so much that I need to delve into with Silent Running. Ray and I just watched it, and I was looking through all the commentaries and everything that's in there. It's like, oh, this is just an embarrassment of riches.
That's cool.
On Arrow's really knocking out of the park on a lot of stuff that they're doing, and it's super cool. So anytime there's a sale, I try to resist as much as I can, but I usually pick a few things up here and there.
That's wonderful. Thank you. My only endorsement actually is, once again, I have a playlist that I should post on our Facebook page, but it's called Rare and Forgotten Mid-Century Horror, and it's just where I put all of the 60s and 70s, like, made for TV horror movies that I find, and they're awesome.
Oh, it's made for TV, but do you have the Seven Golden Vampires soundtrack?
I don't. No.
Oh man, because it's also got this kind of radio play kind of stuff in it too. But it felt like,
if you
it's
find
not
it,
TV,
send it
of
to me.
course, but
Yeah.
I don't know if it's up. I mean, I bought the CD, so
okay.
I'm sure somebody's put it up somewhere, or it could be on Spotify or whatever, or Amazon Music, which is usually what I use. But yeah, I got the CD, and like parts of it will come through and it'll just be the soundtrack parts. And I have it on random because I think it was one of those on Amazon Music that had, auto rip, where you buy it and then it rips to your account, and it becomes part of your library. So I guess it is on Amazon Music for sure. But yeah, if you get a chance to add that, Seven Golden Vampires is a cool soundtrack, but then there's like little audio bits of that I'd forgotten about that came up in my random list, and that's worth it too. I didn't mean to interrupt your playlist, but it just seemed like, as much as we've talked about that movie, it's definitely something you would dig.
Yeah, that's wonderful. All right. Cool. And that brings us to the end. Thank you very much for discussing Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. Belated Happy Mother's Day to everybody, and yeah, find more stuff like this. I'm gonna be posting. I'll post this on the Facebook page, but I will post the playlist of mid-century horror because people would dig that. Thanks, Tony. I'm glad you could be on. And everybody, keep circulating the shows and bring new listeners. Thank you so much. Bye.
Night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.